And that's just not my plan. And there was no room in there for me. At that time, I had to fight within myself, feeling guilty for wanting to chase my own destiny and speak out about what I believed and what I observed and what I understood. And I realized that had been taught that I was supposed to be very secretive about the things I'm good at, thinking being one of them. And that this idea that I was supposed to oh God, I remember when I was 13, there was an article in the Reader's Digest called, can a woman be happy married to a man whose IQ is lower than hers? And this was the sort of influence that there was there. I felt almost guilty for being intelligent and for having a fairly radical thought and for having an outrageous sex life. And then I said, okay, well, that's not me. This is who I am and where I am going and what's important to me.
Welcome to Normalizing Non-Monogamy, the podcast where we interview incredible people from all over the world to hear their personal journeys of self-discovery through the lenses of love, sex, and relationships.
Our mission is to show people that they're not alone and to inspire them to embrace their true selves so that together we can open minds and live authentically without shame.
We believe everyone's story is powerful and beautiful, yet it's important to remember that everyone does life a little bit differently and that the views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect our own.
Additionally, we aren't doctors. Please consult a medical professional for anything regarding your health that you might learn about on the show. Enjoy!
Welcome to episode 400.
400.
We're so excited.
We made it.
We're Finn and Emma, and today we're incredibly excited and honored to bring you a conversation with Dossie Easton. Dossie is a psychotherapist, relationship counselor, educator, and author working primarily with sexual minority communities. She has also written several books with her co-author Janet Hardy, including The Ethical Slut, When Someone You Love Is Kinky, and Radical Ecstasy. As you'll hear in this interview today, there's a handful of new books coming soon too.
Yeah, such a iconic guest to have on. So we're super excited. Thank you, Dossie, for coming on and for sharing with us. As you'll hear, Dossie has lived the hell out of life, and this is such a powerful interview. Dossie has been exploring non-monogamy for nearly 60 years after declaring in 1969 that she'd never be monogamous again. And today she takes us all the way back in time, actually before that to her teenage years, and what it actually looked like for a young woman in the 1960s trying to find and defend her autonomy and sexuality. And as you'll hear today, there's no shortage of wild and crazy stories.
Yes.
Dossie's had some fun in her time. But at the same time, this was also an act of resistance at this time, right? This wasn't easy. It's not necessarily easy today. Definitely wasn't easy 60 years ago. And so Dossie has been part of a movement trailblazing the way for so many to be able to explore sex, pleasure, kink, relationships, and just honestly being a woman in ways that don't follow societal scripts. So we are so excited for this conversation today and can't wait to jump into it.
Thank you so much, Dossie, for coming on and sharing your story and for, of course, all of the work that you've done over the years as well. Just a quick reminder to anyone listening, you can check out links to Dossie's work over on our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com, in the podcast show notes or in your podcast player.
As part of our episode 400 celebration, we're actually going to skip our normal announcements today, but did want to remind you really quickly that you can find out more information about our community, upcoming workshops, all of our events, and all of the other ways that you can support our podcast and support the work we do so that we can keep doing this for another 400 episodes. We've laid it all out on our website pretty easily. Please go check it out, and we will be back at you with our regularly scheduled announcements in episode 401.
Next week. We also wanted to take a moment here and say thank you. This podcast would not be possible without all of you out there listening, and also without everyone willing to come on and wanting to come on and share your stories. Thank you for everyone who's been a guest and for all of you listening out there over the years. We're so excited to put together even more episodes, hopefully another 400 or more in the future.
Yeah, I just wanted to say too, thank you from my side for all of you who've come on and shared your personal personal story. We know this is super vulnerable, and we're so grateful to everyone who has come on and shared over the years. Some of you early on, you had no idea who we were. Some of you still don't have any idea who we are, and you reach out and you're like, I want to share my story, and we make it happen. So just incredibly grateful to all of you who are willing to share at this level about your relationship to help others feel less alone. We also want to say a huge thank you to anyone who has helped support us over the years. That's not just our financial supporters, like the community members, but also those of you who've like opened your homes, offered us help and assistance, offered to do work for us, offered us all sorts of things. People reach out to us all the time. So we're just incredibly grateful. This show, again, would literally not exist without you, without the people coming on to share your stories. This is a community supported show. It's a community effort. That's why we talk about community all the fucking time.
Yes,
because this doesn't work without community. So thank you to everybody who has helped make this show exist for over 7 years and now 400 episodes.
Yes, we can't wait to continue working with all of you to bring you more episodes, more content, and just keep helping people feel less alone out there. So thank you again. And with that, let's go and talk with Dossie.
Let's do it.
Welcome to the podcast, Dossie. We are so excited to chat with you today, and just thank you so much for being here and for wanting to share as well. We'd love for you to start by introducing yourself.
For anyone who doesn't know who Dossie is.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm Dossie Easton. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist now, although my poly career goes way back before that. And so part of my my joy in life actually is being a therapist and also being invited on people's journeys as many people come to me when they're opening relationships and learning, from how their journey goes and supporting them along the way. And that's just delightful. We have 5 books in print and another one currently being edited. And we've graduated from self-publishing to Random House.
Yay, congratulations.
I have a terrible fear that I might become respectable one of these years. And so we have written books on polyamory and on BDSM, basically. We are currently working on a second edition of Radical Ecstasy, which is subtitled SM Journeys to Transcendence, and is for us the intersection of sexuality and spirituality and BDSM, obviously. Let's see. And we have just sent off to the publisher a workbook based on the Ethical Slut that we were requested to write by one of the imprints from Random House. And so they are now editing it. And it's very interesting to be in that process. This is the most formal editing backup we've ever had.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, we're super excited today. I would say your book, The Ethical Slut in particular, has been mentioned on our podcast probably more than any other resource that we've ever had. So it's a delight to have you here for our 400th episode. So welcome.
Yeah. And it was a great blessing in my life to be able to write the Ethical Slut and put it out there. Because when I first decided in 1969 that I would never be monogamous again, which I have lived up to, everybody told me I was crazy, right? I mean, basically, it didn't even in the super hip, Haight-Ashbury post 1967, et cetera. That was outrageous. And so the journey from there to here and to actually have written the book and be able to have been able to write the book, because we originally self-published, which means kind of no holds barred, no censoring, no.
Yeah. You can put whatever you want out there.
Yeah, nothing like what will our audience want to hear?
Yeah. Well, I'd love to go back, Dossie, to 1969. I'm curious what happened that year or around that time that you declared that I'm done with monogamy and haven't gone back after almost 50 years. 60 years, almost 60 years.
Well, actually, I was pretty much, I had some serial monogamy under my belt before then, and I noticed on a rather remarkable acid trip, mind you, that I had always been a slut between partners. And so, and then I always believed somehow that eventually I would settle down, and obviously I never did. And that was just an amazing day. I had a very transformative acid trip. I suspect I took a rather large dose. And that was where it really affirmed to me that sexuality was my path, that was where I was going, and that was what was important to me. And to me, sexuality and feminism were kind of hand in hand in terms of the changes I wanted to see.
Yeah.
In the world I was living in, and the changes I wanted to make in myself, the things I needed to learn.
Yeah.
If I was going to escape from the standard plot, which I rudely describe as I was supposed to, protect the market value of my virginity until I found a man, nice young professional man, right?
Yeah. Yeah, right.
That's a lawyer, yes.
Yeah, that's what we're told.
Who would marry me because I refused to have sex with him, and that made me trustworthy, evidently, and for reasons that are obscure to me. And then he would buy me a nice house in the country, and we would send our children to all the right schools. It was like, you've got to be kidding, and that's just not my plan. And there was no room in there for me. At that time, I had to fight within myself, feeling guilty for wanting to chase my own destiny.
Yeah.
And speak out about what I believed and what I observed and what I understood. And I realized that I had been taught that I was supposed to be very secretive about the things I'm good at, thinking being one of them. And that there was, that this idea that I was supposed to oh God, I remember when I was 13, there was an article in the Reader's Digest called, let's see, can a woman be happy married to a man whose IQ is lower than hers?
Wow.
I don't think anybody would publish an article like that these days. But anyway, and this was the sort of influence that there was there. I felt almost guilty for being intelligent and for having a fairly radical thought and for having an outrageous sex life.
Yeah.
And then I said, okay, well, that's not me. This is who I am and where I am going and what's important to me. It was about 4 years later that a lover of mine, Maggie Rubenstein, founded San Francisco Sex Information. And then I had a whole community of people who talked about sex all the time and like that.
But it sounds like growing up and before then, you didn't have any of that.
No, I didn't. I dropped out of college when I was 18 and moved to New York. And at that time, my own sexual freedom was definitely, I think when I was 17, I sort of had light bulb went off over my head one day. And I said to myself, how can a word be dirty? That just doesn't make any sense. It's a word, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't have dirt on it, It's
yeah, like the word dirty doesn't make sense in that context.
Yeah, right. And so that was my first sort of great revelation, I guess, or a great thought of saying, this is start questioning actually the kind of beliefs that we had been told about so much about sexuality. And the other thing influenced me enormously, but it was a very negative thing. When I first started I spent some time in the everything but years, everything but penetrative sex. And when I first tried to do that with a partner of mine, I had a panic attack. I literally freaked out. And that happened for a while. It took me quite a while and a lot of determination. I wish I could tell you that some blessed person came along and, it was just the right person with the right touch. And no, it wasn't like that. It was like gritting my teeth and saying, I'm going to get through this no matter what. I'm sick of this shit.
Determination to get through the fear there.
Yeah, right. And unburden myself of this virginity thing.
Yeah.
Well, it's really interesting that you say that because, right, simultaneously, it sounds like so much of who you are, and I think all of us are, was not that reserved, not that, I don't know, not even reserved, but you said like sexuality was your path, but yet, and I think that's just really important for people to hear that, right? Even somebody who's made a living and written books about this, that the day one, it wasn't like you came out like, hey, I wrote the Ethical Slut when I was 18. Like you were fighting all of the same shit that everybody else has been fighting.
Yeah, right. I was furious. when I realized what was going on, I was like, this is ridiculous. Where do these, how did I become so terrified of this? And I don't want this to have that kind of power over me.
Yeah. So when you moved to New York, what happened when you got there, when you're trying to embrace this part of yourself in New York and break free from that? Was that sort of where the momentum kind of started for you?
Yeah, it was right on the edge. It was right before I left college. I was going to a place called Bryn Mawr, which is in Pennsylvania and is supposed to mean that you're successful or something like that. And I really did. I thought I would find a home there, but I didn't. I was very unhappy there, and so I left to go to what I call the University of Life, and went to New York to join the psychedelic movement and basically have sex with everybody I could get my hands on. When I was first in New York, in Greenwich Village and Lower East Side, right, land of beatnik suite, they call us back then. And that was right before we were called hippies, and 1962, I think. And after I'd been there about 6 weeks, a friend of mine told me, as if he was being nice and, thoughtful and fatherly or something, that I was getting a reputation. I was like, why do you think I left Massachusetts? And I would point out that at that time at Bryn Mawr, if a student there got pregnant, the policy was that the student government would review her situation. If it was sort of understandable, supposedly, maybe somebody she was engaged to or something like that, right?
So if it was an appropriate pregnancy.
Some respectable form of getting pregnant, yes.
Yeah.
Then they would allow her to withdraw without putting it in her record. And if they decided that she was a slut, they would have her expelled and it would go on her record permanently.
No wonder you were having panic attacks trying to have sex.
Well, at that time, I had kind of dropped out of the mainstream culture entirely. I haven't ever lived as an adult in the mainstream culture. Yeah. Sometimes it's hard for me to understand that, but I had odd occupations to make money, and it was freelancing something or other, and because I just didn't fit in very well to the mainstream culture.
Yeah. Well, so when you left Bryn Mawr, was the mission like, I'm going to New York, I'm gonna join the psychedelic movement, and I'm gonna figure the sex shit out? Like, was that the mission when you left?
Well, by that time I was fucking everybody. I was having a wonderful time and really enjoying it. I also had some of my first relationships with women. I identified at the time thinking that, again, that I would settle down and that would probably be with a man. And as time went on, I had identified as bi and then eventually as queer, as the decades passed. But at the time then, and I think the most difficult thing that happened during those years, I had a lover, the first woman I'd ever known who called herself a lesbian. She was a very lovely young woman. I was 19 and she was 16, which meant that I had, I could lease an apartment and things and she couldn't. But otherwise we were pretty much equals. And someone killed her.
Wow.
Murdered her. A man, they knew who it was. Or, our people knew who it was. Because he had come onto her, and she said what she always said to men who came onto her. She was very pretty. She always said, I'm sorry, I'm a lesbian. I don't do guys, and don't take it personal. Yeah. And that was one of the most painful and bizarre experiences in my life. I mean, I didn't know the guy who did it, but many people in the community did. And it was ugly. It was really ugly. And I realized that I had very much lost any protections I had in the mainstream culture.
And that was when you were
19,
20.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Holy shit. Well, no, like Emma said, no wonder, talk about messaging that tells you that who you are and what you're doing is not okay.
Right. Right. And the police they wanted to arrest all the people at the party because people were smoking dope and such like. And, it was like it went on and on like that. The police wanted to find people to arrest. And everybody thought Frisky had overdosed, and she hadn't. She'd been poisoned.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, it was a sad thing.
Yeah.
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 Really
what a tragic and awful way.
And, I knew Frisky had stuff she needed to overcome at the time. And I really wanted to see who she became as a grown-up. Mm. She was one of the most intelligent women I'd met, and she was an amazing person. And I really wanted to see when she got past. I suspect that she came from a pretty traumatic childhood. I never knew her by any name other than Frisky.
Wow.
So I expect that she had, escaped from her family, basically.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's a very tragic story. But things were dangerous back then.
Yeah.
Well, for sure. And I think that, you said it there earlier about you've been pushing against culture and the mainstream, but not even just, what people's opinions are. That you were shown here that there was no support for you down this path. That if you're going to go down this path, you're in danger. There's risk to you. Your life is on the line, and the police and nobody's there. There's no safety net for you. I'm just blown away, Dossie, that you're able to then take that and go, no, this is still who I am, and I'm going to go forth and do that, and have been doing it for 60 plus years.
Yeah. Something in me I am very grateful for. Much as I got pissed off when I started realizing that there was no such thing as dirty words, that concept didn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
And that it was about forbidding us to talk about sex and make sense about sex and, so on and so forth, right? That was obviously part of that story. Then years later, I wound up in a relationship which, unfortunately, after we decided to get pregnant, mind you, he came down with adult onset schizophrenia and became paranoid and violent. I had to leave him and hide, actually. And when I was 6 months pregnant. And I am thrilled. My daughter is now 56, and she is, we are close friends, and there's great love between us. And we've never really been that disconnected. Not in we've lived in different places, but she's been great support for me. In these last years, I've had a couple of major spine surgeries and things. Frankly, my sex life is no longer anywhere near as active as it used to be because my health will not withstand it right now.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get enough health together to get out in the world a bit more.
Yeah. Unfortunately, life has a way of doing that to us at different stages.
And sex is a great motivator too, right?
Yeah.
Like, hey.
Yeah, right. I'm working on it, really.
So you just shared, right, that you have a daughter. You've explored such a wide array of partnerships and different ways of relating to people. And one of the things Emma and I were curious about coming into this is just if there are along your path moments, relationships, connections, whether they were 5 minutes or years and years, that just really stick out to you as like pivotal moments that sort of shifted and changed your path.
Well, I think when I ran away from that violence, I said I can't have a baby here. I tried various things, getting treatment with psychiatrists and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I didn't really know what schizophrenia was back then. I wasn't formally trained at the time.
Sure.
And, I was very, very angry. Obviously at him. He was very violent, and he had also threatened to kill me on numerous occasions, especially after the baby was born and he didn't need me anymore.
Wow.
And he would smile when he told me that. It was really, really violent. It was very nasty and very unexpected. So leaving that was really important because I also came out of a rather violent childhood. And I think that getting angry, learning to accept my own anger, I was very frightened of my own anger originally, and learning to accept my own anger and act on it, thank you very much, was like a lot of what kept me going through all this. Mm-hmm. I mean, I realized that not only was it dreadful what my partner was doing and hadn't been doing before, but was doing now. And, but it was also dreadful that we were living in a culture where what you do if you're feeling small and scared and rotten is you make somebody else smaller than you. Mm-hmm. You know, that's like, especially if that's supposed to be what men do, right? It's like, excuse me, this is not healthy. This is not healthy for our sons. This is not healthy for our kids in schools. This is just not healthy shit. And so I was very angry at the whole culture, as well as my ex and so on. Mm-hmm. I managed to pull it together. I mean, I'm very. It's very thrilling to me to be here, having been successful in life, because, it was close a few times. There was some times when I was really right on the edge of failing completely.
Yeah.
I'm just blown away. Like I said it a few minutes ago, blown away that the stuff that you've come up against that has said, don't be Dossie. I mean, death threats, watching your partner be murdered. There's so many things, and yet you keep like almost like two middle fingers, like, fuck that, I'm going to be me.
Yeah.
How?
Well, I was just enraged, It was wrong. It was just plain wrong. I'm very grateful for the craziness of my adolescence, frankly. It was really wild, and I managed to survive, and I managed to keep going, and it was like every single thing I took the place. It was like, this is not how it's supposed to be, I've worked in battered women's shelter. I don't know if you know that about navigating consent.
A little bit about it.
Yeah, I developed recently. This is my most recent project, actually. And Ms. Willowcat is mostly operating it now because I've been quite ill. But I wrote a series of classes about consent, and designed to be delivered on 2 tracks for survivors and for transgressors. And I've done a lot of work with survivors, and my partner in crime with all this, Ms. Willowcat, has done a lot of work with Hamish Sinclair, who wrote a lot of the recovery books, the Alive programs for transgressors, and in fact worked in prisons constantly. And Ms. Willowcat has done that work. So together we have a lot of experience, and I'm pleased to be working for the first time formally with transgressors, because that's, well, if you don't want to be part of the problem, you got to be part of the solution. You can't just somehow say that all the survivors are supposed to bear the burden of changing this society. You have to look at what do I really want the transgressors to do, and is there education that will work for this, and can we I think one of the things I'm most proud of in our recent history is that one of our transgressor graduates, donated $2,000 so that we could get the legal fees and get our 501c3.
Oh, wow.
That's amazing. And I love that idea, right? That sounds like that it's, you've made a mistake, you've hurt somebody, you've caused harm. The goal here isn't cast you out of society, but how do we reintegrate? How do we bring you back in? How do we actually make a difference? Because, right, having a whole bunch of people who are sitting off on their own in the corner in time out for the rest of their lives because they did a bad thing, what does that solve? That doesn't move the needle.
Yeah. And we've had some remarkable people come through the classes and even join us in teaching. And that's what I've been looking for. I've been looking for, okay, what is important for people to learn? What is helpful? What is useful? And how can people examine? This is much more sort of human potential movement, I think, strategies from the 70s.
Yeah.
And it is working, and it's helpful. And I think that we're making a difference, and it's still a very small project, but we're working on it.
Yeah.
And it's very gratifying to do this work.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen a little bit about it on your website, so I appreciate you expanding on it as well. And really what stands out to me kind of from what you shared of your path of just this anger and rage fueled you to change, to shift. Like you found a healthier way to channel that and towards the rest of your life than potentially other options, right? And it really kept you going.
Yeah. Oh, well, this is not okay. Well, how are we going to change it? San Francisco Sex Information was a big part of that for me when Maggie and Carolyn and Tony founded it back in '73. It was, and it's still going, but it was this time being a whole community of people working for sexual change. We used to get invited to all of there was a yoga group, I can't remember its name, but anyway, they were trying to do sex parties in Marin, and they made sure that their guest list had about 25% Sfissy people on it, because we were the people who knew how to do play parties.
The OGs. I love it. Well, and I think what I love about this too, Dossie, is throughout all of this, you've had these experiences that I think, and I don't know, this is just something that just dawned on me, is like Emma and I are navigating non-monogamy for the last 20 years or so. There have been a lot of moments that were like, that wasn't good. I would have done that different. And sometimes we tell some of these stories to people and they're like, why did you keep going? And some days I'm like, why did I keep going? Why? And I feel like there was just this part of it for me that was, it's not the, it's the bigger picture is the problem. It's not this person. This person is also a product of this broken system. And your work is like, okay, this person did a thing, but they aren't a bad person. They're a product of a system that's broken, that's designed to make us think all of these things that are bad, and you've been pushing against it for your whole life.
Yeah. And look at our mythology about survivors. They used to call women who had been raped ruined.
Yeah.
That you've just been broken for the rest of your life. I mean, that's disgusting. One of the things we teach and re-emphasize over and over in the survival channel is that they can, people can throw dirt at us all they want, but the truth is it's still their dirt.
Yeah.
It's not our dirt. It doesn't have to be our dirt. We don't have to take it on. We can work for change in the society. Yeah. I mean, I've done a lot of that work. Yeah. I learned a lot working at the battered woman shelter. I thought they were going to be disempowered kind of women, and they weren't. They were very strong women. I was amazed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just because, I mean, it just shows that you can be a very strong woman and still have shit happen.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. It's not a sign of weakness that somebody did something to you.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was just surprised that these batterers had chosen such strong-minded women. I was like, that's amazing. How did that happen? I've never quite figured that one out.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. Well, and I'm curious for you too, Dossie, as you're living in both these worlds, right? You're living in that world where you're working in these spaces where you've seen the impacts, but also you're finding new ways to embrace and explore pleasure and joy and sex around all of this. And and I'm just curious, like what you're doing in your own life to keep yourself like happy and healthy as you're also doing the really powerful work to change the culture. Like how do you find the joy and the balance, the balance of it? Yeah.
I learned a long time ago that that what I could do, that I had to look at what I could do realistically. I worked for 10 years in a psychiatric halfway house that was run by a bunch of aging hippies. I mean, it was great fun. And they kept accusing us of spoiling the clients. God, we expected to treat them well. What do you know? And work with them, not against them, with them.
Right.
And
that's the whole point.
Yeah, right. And so I learned an enormous amount working in that place. But one of the things I learned was that I had to find the solutions that fit with the resources that I had. And whether that was, the resources that we were trying to build for housing for people and stuff like that, because people often lost their housing when they had episodes and so on. And, or whether it was, getting the medical system working in a way that worked for the clients. and respected the clients. But, we could do that work. What I could do was limited, by the physical resources that were available. When there was a governor of California who kept disfunding community mental health services. And what you're looking at now is the disfunded mess. What we had when I was working at this residential treatment program is we had an average length of stay of 30 days and a maximum length of stay of 90 days. So we could do some real serious work.
Yeah.
They eventually cut that down to the maximum length of stay is 10 days, and afterwards they had to go to the shelter.
Wow.
Now, people have had an episode, a psych episode of an episode of mental illness, and one of the great tragedies of mental illness is that it's episodic. People get up, they rebuild their lives, they get relationships and friends and everything, and then they get another episode and lose it all again. It's a dreadful, dreadful disease. And so what you can do to help is limited by the disease as well. But so everything is limited by the resources that you have. And so I've had some pretty good resources. When I went to set up the classes, oh gosh, I went around looking for resources, places to hold them. And so this is before COVID. And everybody said yes. Center for Sex and Culture said, we'll make a place for you in our space. We have a space. Let's, we'd love to have your classes. Now the Folsom Street Center, a community center, wants to host our classes, but everyone wants to keep going on Zoom. And I wish we could get the classes going in person again.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's things you can do that you can't do without being there in person.
Yeah. There's definitely a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, you got to work with the resources you have. So that's what you do. You want to make change. I mean, we've seen enormous change. When's the last time you heard anybody talk about premarital sex?
Some of the people we talked to on the episode, on the podcast, but outside of that, right? Basically, because they're trying to undo their own shame around
so much of it.
Yeah. And it's, we have definitely made changes, and particularly in sexuality, a lot of people don't agree with me that this is important to the culture that at large, and to feminism in particular, but to the culture at large. And if there is such a thing as masculinism, I think also for the freedom of men. I don't think it's a good deal for men either.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's, we talk to a lot of guys on this show and a lot of people who identify as men, and so much of I think, again, not everybody, but the pendulum, I think, has swung in a lot of ways where there's a lot of fear of accidentally being a transgressor, right? Like I think there's just such a lack of how do we show up in these spaces in a way that feels good to us and to the people we're with without accidentally causing harm, without accidentally hurting somebody. And I think it's scary. Like personally, for me, it's scary to go into a lot of these spaces where I don't want to accidentally make a misstep, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
And, I'm well, as you can tell, this is not work that I'm doing in cancel culture.
Mm-hmm.
It is saying there is a future and that you can keep going. And I think cancel culture is, I think there are people that need to be taken off the guest lists of our parties when you have to. I lived in party culture for a long time. The reason you guys don't know me is because when I started working as a therapist 30 years ago, I realized that my clients were going to the same parties I would go to, and I could not. I mean, there are private things I do, and I started teaching on the conference circuit, so I would go party in other cities somewhere else.
Yeah.
It's not like I had to give it up entirely, because I think public sex is really important. I think that having a place where you can look at other people. One of my first revelations was that everybody is gorgeous when they're coming. It doesn't matter if they're old, young, fat, thin. It doesn't matter. They're all gorgeous when they're coming.
Yeah.
And yelling and screaming and all that good stuff.
Yeah. And expressing and showing pleasure.
Yeah.
No, I love that you bring this up, because I think, people listening, and maybe they're not super familiar with non-monogamy, or maybe their view of it is it's all just sex parties and crazy hedonistic, adventures. And I'm curious.
Which there's some of that.
Which there is.
And it's not all that.
And I think what's beautiful about that is there's so much that can be learned in those spaces. And I'm curious, as you said you were big into the party culture for a while. I'm curious, what are some of the things that you, either for yourself, really took away from that, or you saw other people like really taking away from those spaces?
Well, I was in the party culture for a good 25 years. I've had a long life. I've had plenty of opportunities.
You've seen some stuff.
Yeah, right. And then in about 91, I had to leave that as a regular thing. And although I missed it, the opportunity to do therapy and do this work, and it was obvious. I mean, I couldn't go be a therapist for straight people. I'm not a good therapist for them. Okay.
It's not a good fit. Not a good fit.
Not a good fit. And so to go and be in a place where we are, like doing, exploring gender, exploring all these concepts that we have. It's wonderful. It's really wonderful. It's gorgeous. A lot of people don't want to think or include sexuality as part of that learning path, but it is. One of the things about public sex is that, the first thing you have to get over is shame. Not only that, you have to get over body image shit because, you're going to be eventually, hopefully, with any luck, naked. And so that has to be okay. And, all kinds of things like that. You get past it and you learn that, you see what other people do and you see how beautiful it is. And you can see I know toward the end of my time with this, and this was mostly in BDSM parties, I would sometimes stop to watch an established couple when they were playing with each other because the kind of intimacy and the development that they had of their relationship was so remarkable to watch. I saw a lot of the beauty of sexuality, and that includes BDSM. To my mind, my spirituality is very much linked to sexuality, and that's why we're doing a second edition of Ethical Slut. Actually, not Ethical Slut. I'm sorry, Radical Ecstasy, our book on sex and spirituality. It's a way of being alive. Wilhelm Reich, in his talks in Berlin in like 1936, I think it was, he gave a series of talks to a group of young socialists in Berlin in Germany before World War II, during the rise of Hitler. And one of the things that he said that just stuck with me, he said, teaching people to be ashamed of their masturbation and of their fantasies is the way you support a tyrannical government. You teach them to be ashamed of themselves in the most intimate possible ways, and then you can control them. And we have, considering how many people became willing to commit atrocities during World War II in Germany, it's so true. Would they have all rebelled and refused if they had their sexuality, if they weren't forbidden to even have the dreams that they have?
Yeah.
If they hadn't been taught that was shameful and disgusting and like that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and to be able to speak up for what we want, what we don't want, what we feel is right, what we feel is wrong, right? To not be afraid of these things and to know that other people are thinking and feeling. We're taught just stuff it all down and just be ashamed quietly.
I do think in a lot of ways that we have come so far out of the closet that I think the cat is out of the bag. I don't think they're going to stuff it back in very easily.
Yeah.
And that includes the explorations of gender. It includes the whole shebang.
Yeah.
It's like when I started out, everything was terribly secretive, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you were terrified of being found out, right? And so that was the other thing about public sex. It was just totally the opposite of that. And when I've had couples who are new to poly in my practice, sometimes it's just gotten to the point where I say, no, you now have a closet, okay? You didn't have a closet before, but now you do. Now you know what it means to be in a closet. And you can't go pick people up at the nearby dance club or the local fern bar. You're not going to be able to do that anymore because their expectations of what a connection with you is going to mean to them, what future is available, are not the same as yours. Mm-hmm. So you have to go join a community.
Yeah.
Yeah. find people that are like-minded and that you can talk to about these things, and that like just find your people.
I send people to Munches all the time. I send people to Body Storytelling all the time. These are the community places where you could start finding an entry place, and you go where people want to talk about what it is that we do, and explore and talk about how their experiences were like this or like that. And that's what you need, is the people, not just cruising places. I'm sad to hear that Munches have become more cruisy than they used to be, more overwhelmed with cruising than they used to be, because it used to be the place where you went and talked with other people who wanted to actually talk, which means think about what we were doing.
Yeah.
And how to make that work.
Yeah, there's so much power in I think this is one of the things that we've talked a lot about lately, and we've talked to a lot of people about, is there's so much value in having a community space where you can cruise, right? Like, that's super important, but it's equally, and I even sometimes argue more important, to have a space where it's not about hooking up, meeting partners, or escalating, but just purely, I can go, I can talk, I can get support, I can talk about complex subjects and have people get it, and really be intellectual, or just get support about it, where I'm not worried that somebody's going to hit on me, or now I have to navigate some other piece of this. Like, having both.
Yeah, right. There was a way back in 73, 74, when Cynthia Slater founded the Society of Janus, and Larry, I forget Larry's last name. He moved to the East Coast and hasn't been around. When he showed up for a visit and said that he was one of the founders of Janus, everybody said, "No, who is this guy who says that?" But I was there, and he was. Yes. The two of them were a couple at the time. We had a couple came to us, Jim Kane and Ike. I forget Ike's last name. Gay men who were elders and mentors in the gay leather community, and they're represented in the Leather Museum and Archive in Chicago and things like that. Marvelous people. They used to have a van that was all tricked out to be a little dungeon, and they would drive it down to Folsom Street on Saturday night and have their own private dungeon just parked on the side by the sidewalk.
That's great.
Invite people into their dungeon. But they were amazing people, and they had come and joined us, and they were very good for us, for me and Cynthia in particular, because this was way before feminism had made an impact on the culture and straight world. And so you wouldn't believe some of the come-ons that we had to get rid of, as it were. But what Jim had to say, and he was really one of the important leaders in the leather community per se, he said, I can go, I have my thing, I can take my own dungeon down to Folsom Street anytime I want to. I can go to parties, I can go to back rooms of bookstores and bars, and I can get my rocks off anywhere I want to. I can play anywhere I want to. I always have this available to me. This is the only place I could come to and talk.
Yeah.
And Janice Easton, our community has gotten so big, the BDSM community. It used to be kind of one community, and that was nice. That was very inclusive, and now we're kind of split up by mostly by orientations, and I suppose that had to happen. But it is sad to me to find that there's, it made me very happy when women's community developed, because women have been so taught to be afraid of sex that we started to get a women's community of sexual outlaws. That was just amazing.
Yeah.
That was a really good thing. That is a really good thing.
Yeah.
But the fact that we now have our communities that are kind of separate from each other is not so exciting to me.
Yeah, well, and I think, this is one of the things that we think about often as we're trying to build community and building our community, is it's like simultaneously, right, the women's spaces or the queer spaces or these spaces that are just for that group of people are so important. And it's also really important to have spaces where all the different factions can come together and talk and share and be like, well, we do this, or we're struggling with this, and
so we can learn from each other.
Yeah, you're not just in this silo where you deepen the divide, but you can get the support and then bring it into the spaces that we all share.
Right. When I was first a feminist in the mid 70s, when the movement was starting to grow, I would go to retreats on women's land up in Mendo and like that, and and be a separatist for a long weekend or something. I was never a long-time separatist, but to do that was real important to me. That was where I learned who I am, when I wasn't busy trying to prove that I would be a useful wife or whatever it is that you do in, whatever the old part of me was trained to do. Mm-hmm. This was one place where I could get away from it. And I heard recently from a friend of mine that had gone to an all BIPOC party where everybody had more melanin in their skin than we do. And there were, it was such a relief. And I was like, yeah, right. You don't have to run around and placate people like me. You don't have to fear people like me are going to get judgmental or whatever. Yeah. And I can feel excluded, but I actually think that both of those things need to happen. I think the bridges between is important. I think finding ways to make our communities more welcoming to BIPOC folks, for instance, and trans folk, and so on, is very important. And we can't do that if we don't get together, and start knowing each other. And at the same time, to find your own identity, it's real important to have a place where it's okay to be who you are. Years and years ago, I visited Puerto Rico when I was 19, actually. And I was living in New York at the time. And there was something really different about the people in Puerto Rico. And I finally realized that it was okay to be Puerto Rican in Puerto Rico. Where it wasn't so much in New York. And I was seeing a different way people walked, their postures, their guardedness, or their freedom. And I think that's very true in a lot of ways in our sexual communities now, that we're looking at where are we, how do we make safe space for everybody? And how do I find out who I am, my identity?
Yeah.
Because certainly people of color have been told what their identity is supposed to be in very bad ways. And women, and for that matter, men, I can't believe that, you get called a sissy if you don't want to play football in high school. I'm like, I would outlaw football in high school, frankly, if I had my way.
Yeah.
Partly because of the concussions and partly because of what?
Yeah. That path of figuring out your identity and doing that at different stages of life too. It's such a process, and something that I feel there's often so much pressure of figuring it out now and tell me what it is now. But then it's well, that also might change. And
that's the other thing I keep telling people, that they're because there's so much opposition in the society, people keep looking for their authentic self, right? And I would prefer to look for authentic selves, frankly, and pluralize that concept, because I think that if I look at a sort of concept like Jungian personae or something like that we have plenty of selves.
Yeah.
And the selves that I play in roleplay BDSM, I'm working on a chapter about that, are very valid parts of me. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't want to live full-time in any of those.
Yeah.
I have a rebellious 13-year-old named Gloria. I really wouldn't want to keep on being her.
But she's fun to go to sometimes.
Yes. Well, she's fun to play with. Yes.
I love that. Dossie. I'm curious. I've been trying to think of the right way to weave this in, but it feels like
there's no right way.
There is no right way. Okay, sure. That's not how my brain works, Emma. The thought that just comes up is, I think, and I'm sure you've probably heard this, we've heard this, and we've talked to a lot of people who've heard this, of okay, well, great, all this sexual freedom and being a slut is great, but as you get older, you've got to come back to reality at some point. And it seems like, you said at the beginning, you haven't come back to reality. And I'm curious, how you have sort of ebbed and flowed over the years of what being a slut has meant to you, and how you just kind of keep on doing it.
Good question. I learned a lot of lessons. My daughter as I said, I was pregnant when I left that relationship. When I had the acid trip, my daughter was 3 months old. So my daughter's life has been very marked by my own choices in this.
Yeah.
And there were people who joined with me. it was the communal era, post 67, post Summer of Love. And there were a lot of babies because a lot of us decided that this was the future.
Yeah.
That we weren't going to sometimes go somewhere and settle down and behave the way the society and behave, and do what we were supposed to do. That we indeed had a lot to say in our love generation and our psychedelic awareness and our sexual freedom that was essential, really, and that we wanted to live, into the future, that our children were taking ourselves into the future. I co-parented 13 kids back in those years, back in the 70s, and every once in a while I run into them. Some of them are actually active. You probably know some of them because they're active in the poly communities.
Wow. Amazing. Like a whole legacy of like you said, co-parented.
And my lawyer is one of them.
Wow. Amazing.
But the alternative, the alternative worlds, cultures, even the Society for Creative Anachronism and that kind of thing. There's just a lot of places in which you can do that and support each other. So I managed that with my daughter. I mean, we managed. We didn't have a lot of money when she was young, but we got together. We rent a house with other single moms and take. There was always somebody, an adult around to babysit, so that you could have a social life and move around and have kids as well. And so to me that was incorporating the kids was an important part. There was a group in Berkeley, science fiction writers, computer guys, not very many computer women back then. That's changing, I think. Good.
Yes.
And the SCA, the Society for Creative Anachronism, and the Ren Fair was big in this. That were a big group in the East Bay, and I was a member of it, and way back in the 70s. And I think the fact that we were there with children, we were 30 or 40 of us, I guess, and we didn't have any we didn't have rules, really. I mean, it was like you treat each other kindly, you participate, you help out with the kids. I think I wrote in Slut about a time when someone was jealous of me that I had a joint lover with, and I took her kid and my kid to the park so that they could have some time where they weren't busy with the kid.
Yeah.
This was all interwoven. One of the essential things that's interwoven, and you're going to hear more from me about this soon because I'm working with Marie Toulin, who wrote an amazing book called What is Compersion?
Yep. Yes, we know Marie.
Yeah, she's really great. And she lives here not far from me, so we have a friendship I'm very happy with.
Yeah.
We're looking at doing a workshop on breaking up.
Mm-hmm.
And because, back then when it was all this communal living and there were the kids all around, they were toddlers, they were very young children, babies. If you broke up with the partner you had within that community, you couldn't never agree to speak to each other again. You just plain couldn't.
Yeah.
Because you would have to rip your children out of their family to do that. Literally, you would have to, the children who regarded each other as brothers and sisters and who got together for a pajama party virtually every Saturday night so the rest of us could go to a party.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have the children this weekend or not?
Right.
And so we had to find ways of breaking up that didn't go to this cancel. Well, I guess it was a predecessor of the cancel culture that didn't go to this. Get rid of that person. I can never be in the same room with that person again.
Yeah, and turn all of your friends against them. We all now hate this person.
The community.
Yeah.
Obsessed me that's still going on, frankly.
Yeah.
But that was good for me to learn to say this is how we do it. We insist on showing up at the same things and managing to be cordial to each other.
Yeah.
We insist on meeting each other's new lovers. We insist on dealing with our jealousy in some way that doesn't, cause misery to everybody around us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited for that workshop, by the way.
Yeah, we should be putting it on fairly soon. Mm-hmm. And to do it's probably going to be on Zoom and we're just thinking about saying, well, what is a constructive way to end a relationship? Because we can expect in our communities to end. I mean, if we have 6 relationships, then we can really expect to actually have endings of relationships all over the place. Even if a center relationship lasts through that, and we can expect to have more than one primary relationship in our lives as well.
Yeah.
Well, I think what you're touching on here is just really important too, right? If we're going to be out here forming lots of different partnerships, even if those are one night or 2-hour partnerships, to not move through the world leaving just this scorched earth behind us of, well, I can never talk to that person and that person's out and you shouldn't be friends with them. That you can have all of that and be good to one another.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I have 2, I call them my fairy grandchildren. They are the children of an ex of mine. Did we have a good breakup? No, we had a shitty breakup. It was messy, it was ugly, it was very painful and ugly and unpleasant. And I had decided that, I decided and Ray agreed that we would meet once a month and go to dinner or a movie or something or other, just to keep the connection alive. And shortly afterwards, I decided that we should not try to process anything. Anything that we didn't agree about, well, we're not living together anymore, so we don't have to agree about it. So we can just let that lie.
Yeah.
Let's do something else. And it worked. So when all of a sudden she invited me, she said she wanted to do a generation ritual because she decided she knew she wanted babies, but she didn't, she decided that she was going to do that and not worry about whether she had a partner or not to do it with. I had offered to be a grandma because I knew that I was going to be too old to be really a mom, a full-time mom. So we did a generation ritual. Her parents and the rabbi flew in from Chicago. Her mother made a huppah. She got right into it. She asked the members of the community to send her pieces of cloth that to them represented something about their relationship to this future child.
Wow.
And made the huppah out of that. It was amazing. We had a great ritual. And now I've been present at the birth of these 2 children, of Ezra and Anatole. And they are now, 12 and 8, I guess.
Wow.
And they call me Gamma Dossie. And this after it was a really ugly, nasty, angry breakup. I want to tell you, it was not a nice one.
Yeah.
And we got there from there. We got here from there.
Yeah.
And to me, that's so important.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's similar.
With time, too.
Yeah.
It took time, but we put the time in. And actually, I'll recommend to all my clients who are dealing with a difficult breakup that they get together once a month to do something easy, like go to a movie. They won't let you argue in a movie.
That's right.
Right. Yeah. They'll yell at you.
Go to a silent disco and you both just sit there with your headphones on and nod angrily at each other. Yeah. I'm really grateful, Dossie, that you shared that, because not that you had a shitty, tough breakup, but I think it can be easy, especially if you're new to this or even not, to say, well, you've written the books, you've written one of the books that everybody looks to. You must have just had it all figured out, and it must have been this smooth sailing for the whole time.
But we're human.
Yeah, we're human.
Yeah, right. But you also learn a lot. I mean, this was not easy. Yeah, it was hard. But you also learn. And one of the things you learn, I can't say how often I've said this to a client of mine, talking about dreadful stuff in the past. I said, well, look, you actually have already survived all that. And you're not going to do it again. And you've decided that. So you've built yourself a life after that. So give yourself credit.
Yeah. That you're here. You woke up today. You're sitting here. You're doing it.
Yeah, you rejected whatever that difficulty was in your life and decided to do something different. And here you are.
Yeah.
And this is the meaning of being a survivor. I'm a survivor. I'm a successful survivor.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I love that reframe. And I'm also curious, as you've gotten older, how, like, for people, we often talk to people who are, as they get older, they're afraid of losing their sex life, or they're even just discovering non-monogamy or discovering themselves more fully in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and are like, oh no, like, how do I keep going with this? How is my life over? Like, I don't want to end. And so, like, how have you continued to incorporate a sex positive life and
a slutty
life
Yeah.
as you age?
Well, it didn't become a problem until I had my first spine surgery when I was 72.
Okay.
So if that lasted a real long time where I just kept on doing what I was doing, it worked just fine. Obviously, my last lover that I am the grandma to the children is a great deal younger than me. Age difference didn't make that much difference. And I don't think it's why we broke up. So the world was going on, and then I had a big spine surgery. I want to tell you, an army of lovers of exes cannot fail. At the end of that, after that surgery, an ex of mine was supporting my daughter in the recovery room, and I was delirious from too much anesthesia. It was hours and hours and hours. And then it was a few hours the next day. It took me two weeks to come down from the anesthetics.
Wow.
So my ex-lover and my daughter decided that I couldn't be left alone, so they slept in my hospital room. They took turns sleeping in my hospital room for 2 weeks. A couple of other people came in and rescued them there, another ex in the crowd. I put the word out that I was not going to be well enough to come back here. Could anybody rent me a guest room or something for a month in a place that didn't have stairs in San Francisco so I could see my clients? Oh my God, I was a month in the acute hospital and two of my clients, not one, but two, miscarried during that month. I was like, I have to get back to my office. I have to get to my clients.
Wow.
And I was, unbelievably way too sick to work. It was unquestionably not right. So an ex of mine, another ex, showed up with a spare room they had, and that was a place we now call the Fairy Cottage, where a lot of the Leather Quest stuff has been happening. And so I had a room in the at the Fairy Cottage for a month, where I knew almost all the people who were coming in and out because of the various community stuff that was going on there, including Human Alive and so on. And so I just got taken care of X after X after X after X.
I love that.
It's my community now.
Yeah, exactly.
So I love that you said this, because there was a question I wrote down that isn't necessarily from me. I think it's from, the question is, aren't you worried about being alone as you get older? And I feel like that is something that we've heard. That's something that we've heard other people. And this story to me is like the perfect antithesis to that of like, this is, if I, just by living this, quote unquote, slutty life, that I don't have the one person to rule them all, but I'm going to somehow be alone as I get older.
Well, I have a certain hermit tape that I like, actually. There's a part of me that likes it. But truth to tell, the first spine surgery, I was 72, got past it, started socializing again, started running around again, 5 years later, needed another spine surgery. Had I'm fused from my sacrum up to thoracic vertebrae 8.
Oh, wow.
Most of my spine is fused, or half of it at least. And then 2 years after that, I fell and smashed my elbow. Smashed osteoporosis and things. So actually, I have been really quite a sick person for a while, and arthritis and stuff like that. That's the stuff that got to me.
Yeah.
So I am I'm more than a little disabled. I am somewhat disabled now. And so I can't go racing off to parties. And I also couldn't go to local parties anyway. One time they sent me the Bonobo guest list for a party to see if it was free. And I think there were 8 clients of mine, ex-clients of mine. And I don't feel the same way about ex-clients than I do about my exes. It's never worked to try to actually have sex in the same environment, which is why you've never seen me in that. I used to be a very well-known player, mind you. I'm very proud of that. Giving that up was a big deal. But being a therapist to the community has also been, a tremendous blessing in my life.
Yeah.
I wouldn't give that. That's why it was not a bad deal.
Yeah.
I got to do something different, and I had 25 years of living in play party culture.
Yeah. 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 It's like so much of this, as you're talking about, is give and take in life, right? Like this is where I'm at for this season, and this is where I'm at for this season, and choosing different paths, but recognizing like this is a new thing that I'm doing, a new path that I'm going on, but I'm going to embrace it as fully as I can, and we'll see what happens. And
yeah.
And
if I choose to learn Russian now, I probably can't learn to speak Mandarin at the same time.
Right. Yes, you can't do everything at once either.
But I have to admit that I would love to get enough health back to at least occasionally experience what I used to.
Yeah, of course. Like I think there's that it makes sense. There's always that desire, right? And also it's motivation.
And if I could get some of these books out of the house, I have 3 books awaiting my attention before they can be published. And the 4th one that is at the publishers, but they keep sending it back and asking more questions. Do you have another exercise that we could put on this page? That's the workbook thing.
Yeah.
Well, I have a hopefully a fun question, Dossie, which is if you were to today design, you're going to throw your party, the party that we're just talking about, that you wish you could go back to. It's not going to be former clients or current ones or anybody. You get to throw your dream party today. What would it look like?
I'm thinking about, party environments that other people have set up, right? Like there was a lovely party for my 70, I think it was my 75th or one of my birthdays anyway in my 70s for me, and also close birthday to mine, Reed Mahalko, at Mission Control. That was a private party in the afternoon, a Sunday afternoon party. And it was just lovely. And I also got to see how the parties now have introductions, which I really like. My parties at Black Leather Wings, we call the corners, but that's a pagan thing, and it's a different thing that you do. But they talk about what your limits are, what your intention is, and so on and so forth. And I think that's quite charming. I like that. I was the person who said, you've got to close the door at a certain point or they're going to agonize over what to wear, and they're going to show up at midnight after everybody else is halfway through their scenes, and they're going to interrupt everything, and it's not going to work. The door has to close at a certain time so that you have to do your fashion crisis before.
Yes, right. Yes. There needs to be a cutoff.
Do it the day before. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Preferably. But anyway, so there's and I do think that good thoughtfulness about the guest list is important. There's a lot of safety stuff about that. But I think also just a sense of freedom, I guess, a sense of encouraging freedom, of encouraging a playfulness and fun, of, good boundaries make for good space, I think. I think we wrote one of the early, along with Sybil Holiday and Wendy Dalton, whom you probably don't know, the first sort of rules of etiquette for play parties. They included, responsible voyeurism and things like that.
Yeah.
And so all of those boundaries that make it free for people. I once wanted to do a party where we had a costume party where everybody wore clothes that you could see through.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just for the fun of it. And, I would like that. I actually always like to dress for parties. And I had great fun. One time I found this gorgeous old prom gown at a thrift store and it had huge skirts. I couldn't believe how many gay men wanted to climb up under the skirts of a prom gown.
What would you like? Yeah. Well, how would you imagine that would be a thing until you experience it?
It's one of my more successful costumes, and I was like, it wasn't even, it was gay men. Oh, let me see that. What is underneath there?
I love it. How fun. And I love how, like, as you're describing, I'm getting this picture of like, likely afternoon, evening time frame, not too late at night, where like just you can have a container that is set with with boundaries so that people can arrive at a certain time and then drop in and just have a freedom there.
Yeah,
and,
right.
Yeah.
And there's always a place where you can socialize, where maybe the cubby holes are where you leave your clothes or the clothes that you're not going to be wearing, and a place where you can get, something liquid and maybe replenish your blood sugar for the next scene and so on. And then the actual play space.
Yeah. Yeah.
All those things are important, a place to talk and then a place to play.
Yeah. And a lot of see-through clothes.
Yeah, a lot of see-through clothes.
And ideally some prom dresses.
Why not?
Yes, ideally some prom dresses and boot skirts and all kinds of crazy stuff. Part of my support system in the 70s was from a club I wrote about in Ethical Slut called the Omni, which clearly meant omnisexual to us. And there were enormous numbers of people who came to that club who were, or a large percentage of the people who came to that club were one form or another of trans. And so it was interesting because the cruising in that club was very respectful. Because a lot of the time you had no idea what you were going to find between the legs of that person you were flirting with. And that made for some very polite cruising. It also made for some marvelous adventures. And I was looking at the time to figure out what it would be like to be a powerful woman. What would it be like to be openly powerful, right? And my trans women friends were, nobody told them they were not supposed to be powerful when they were growing up. And so I wound up with a closet full of thrift store evening gowns, and I learned how to fix my car from the same women.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was very beautiful. So this exploration of gender has personally been instrumental to me in finding my own identity.
Yeah. And power. And powerful.
Yeah. And what it's like to be a powerful woman, because I was told that anytime I was being powerful, I was somehow making some man feel small.
Right.
Which may be true.
Being powerful. Well, if they wanted to feel small, that was their choice.
Exactly.
I wasn't shrinking the men around me on purpose.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You weren't making them feel a way. They were feeling a way.
Yeah.
I'm so glad we got to talk today, Dossie. And we could do this for another 2, 3, 4 hours. And I hope we get to at some point, but I would love to just give you the opportunity. We've asked a lot of questions. Is there something you wanted to share out into the world today while you've got the microphone in front of you?
I think I've shared a lot of it, to tell you the truth. I would just encourage people to be part of that resistance that says we're not going to let them stuff the cat back into the bag,
Yeah.
And we're going to support people. I'm very appalled by the oppression, the political oppression against trans folk. And I think we need to support our brothers and sisters who are the gender pioneers out there, who are teaching us about gender and how to question what we have always been told was unquestionable. All these assumptions that the world make about who we're supposed to be because we are born with this or that between our legs. And so I would, really encourage everybody to put a lot of support and resistance to these laws oppressing the people who are looking at new ways that we can look at our own genders, for heaven's sakes, all of us. And frankly, I think people who haven't questioned their own gender in this culture are missing something.
Yeah.
Because if you really took all of the horrible stereotypes of how you're supposed to be because you're a man or a woman, then I think that you're not in the right place. I used to play act that stuff when I was trying to figure out how to be popular when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
And it worked. It was amazing. Talk with a little lisp, and oh dear, it was terrible.
But you were figuring it out, right?
Yeah. Well,
yeah, right.
Playing with it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'll share one experience. It's just funny. When I was 15, I was cast in a play. I was in a girls' school at the time, and then the boys' school down the block was having their annual Shakespeare play, and the girls were coming from the girls' school to be in it. And I was cast as Mariah in Twelfth Night, and there was this marvelous gay man teacher at the boys' school who. He was kind of closeted, but, because everybody was back then. But I was this terribly shy kid at the time, and I was this kind of library dyke who always had, glasses held together with a Band-Aid and wandering around with too many books. And he cast me as Mariah, who is the sexy one in 12th Night. And he taught me how to stand with my hips stuck out and laugh out loud and be outrageous. And she has great lines like, "Just think, because thou art virtuous, there will be no cakes and ale." And she had fun, she was great. She's the one who writes the letter of designs the letter and writes it of Malvolio saying, talking about how much he loves his mistress, and so on. And the next day after we performed this thing at the boys' school, and the next day was the prom. And I was not a popular kid. I mean, I had a blind date for it and stuff like that. I was very awkward and very lost. I got cut in on every 3 inches across the dance floor.
Really? Because people saw your performance.
All the boys wanted to know who that Mariah was. A light bulb went off over my head. I said, "Oh, that's how you do it."
So that was the moment. That was the pivotal moment.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Stick your hips out, laugh out loud, say outrageous things, and you'll get a following right away.
Love that.
I love that teacher saw that in you, right?
Yeah, right. I've never found out why or what he saw. I've never had a chance to ask him about that, but I am profoundly grateful.
Well, and I think the rest of us are, because I think so much of your work is probably born out of that moment.
Oh, it was. It really was. Yeah. I was wearing a panniers too, another hoop skirt.
So little did that Dossie know that soon gay men would be climbing under your skirt. That was
right.
So just you wait and see.
Yeah. Thank you. That feels like such a sweet place to end. And also, I want to keep talking for hours. To be continued. So hopefully we can do this again at another point. But thank you so much, Dossie, for everything that you shared today.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for having me. This is delightful.
Yes. And I wanted to just throw an extra thank you to Marie. You mentioned Marie a few minutes ago, and that's actually, we met you on stage at Marie's book launch for What is Compersion.
Right.
That was our first time. Yeah. So I just wanted to say thank you to Marie for inviting us and introducing us, and for the work that she does as well. So, yeah.
Yeah. That's an amazing book. I support it everywhere.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Dossie, and we will talk soon. Have a wonderful day.
Okay.
And we're back. Thank you so much, Dossie, for coming on and sharing today. We're so grateful to be able to talk with you and get your story out there in this way. Thank you so much.
And we're excited to have you back on in 60 more years to tell the next 60 years of your story.
Yes.
So mark your calendar. We're doing it.
A couple of really quick reminders for you all. First up, next week we have our next monthly community workshop that's going to be on July 17th, and is Relational Repair with David Cooley. You can find out more over on the community tab of our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com.
Hey, you saw that I moved those workshops.
Yes.
I moved them from the resources tab to the community tab.
Perfect.
Nailed it. And you can find out all the other resources on our website. We tell you every week how to do it. So if you're not sure, go back and listen to last week, or wait till next week when we have another fantastic interview.
Next week, we have an interview with Cooper.
It's going to be a great one. Well, it already is a great one. It's going to be great for you. It's already great for us.
So come back and listen to episode 401.
That's the promise. We'll be here next week. No telling what state we'll be in.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.